All right, what we're going to take a look at here is how to make a histogram, and we're going to do it in a few different ways. So let's first take a look at the example that has the data we're going to focus on, and that's number 1 on the characterizing data worksheet. So this data represents the margins of victory in the Super Bowl 2003 to 2019. So this is the 2003 value, and then this is the 2019 value. To make a histogram by hand, what you would want to do is take your bin ranges, and so these are here the bin ranges, and count the number of data points in each bin range. So 0 to 9, how many data points are, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there'd be 10 in that range. And you would do that for each range, and then you'd make a chart where the first bar was 10 high, and the next one was however many high, and so on. And so you'd end up with bars that represent the count in each of these bins. Okay. Now, doing it by hand is tedious. Now, there's only a handful of data points here, but in principle, you might be dealing with large data sets where you definitely don't want to do this by hand. So it's useful to know how to make these kind of graphs in Excel. And so I want to show you that in a few different ways. Now, I'm using a Mac, and so some of the controls are a little bit different if you're using it on a PC. If one of these ways that I'm describing doesn't work for you, just let me know in the forum, and I can find a PC to use to make a new video to explain how to make histograms. Okay, but I'll do it with the controls that I have in front of me right now. So I've built in the data for this problem. We have the years, we have the Super Bowl margins of victory in each year. Now, the nicest way to do it would be to simply highlight this data and click a button that makes a histogram. There is such a button in Excel. So if I go to Insert, all right, lots of graph options here. We've made scatter plots. Now we want to go to a histogram. And so there's two pictures here that sort of look like what I'm looking for. This one is to make column graphs, or what Excel calls column graphs. I usually call them bar charts. And this one is for statistical things. And this is a statistical thing. So let me try here first. And they have a histogram. So I click the button for histogram. I've got the data highlighted, and it makes me a histogram. Now, on the PC version, I think this is all you need to do. And you'll be able to right-click here, Format Axis, and you can make the bins whatever ranges you want. There should be like a button that says Bin Width somewhere. For some reason, on a Mac, they don't have that option. So you're stuck with whatever they give you as the bin ranges. And so they made it from 3 to 15, from 15 to 27, 27 to 39, and they made 3 bins. That's not what we're looking for, and there's no straightforward way to change it. So I can't really use this graph for this problem. But this might work for the people who are making graphs on PCs. Doesn't work for me. Let me leave it. I'll leave it up, and then we'll go on to the next one. Okay, so there's a way to make it in Excel, basically doing it by hand, but maybe using the computer to help you along a little bit. But I have to manually put in the bins. So let me put in the bins here, and then we'll put the frequency or the count that go in each bin here. Now the bins I want are 0 to 9. If I write it as like, as I'll do the next one, 10, 19, like that, you'll notice Excel interprets that as a date, which I don't want. So I want it to be, so I'm going to write it as 10 to 19. All right, and the next one is 20 to 29, 30 to 39. So I have my 4 bins, and now I need to count how many go in each range. Well, this is still somewhat tedious, but I can use Excel to make it a little bit easier. I can sort this table. Let's see, where did my sort button go? Maybe I make it bigger. All right, I'm going to sort, custom sort, so I can pick which column. I'm going to sort the Super Bowl margins of victory column. and let's go from smallest to largest. All right, so now I want to count how many from 0 to 9, so I can highlight from 0 to 9, and it'll keep track of the countdown here. So there's 10, go in that box. 10 to 19, well, that's 10 to 19 is 5. So 5 goes in that box. 20 to 29, there's only 1. And 30 to 39, there's only 1. All right, so this is technically my histogram. I have the count in each bin that I've made. So this is the histogram. The plot of the histogram now, instead of using Excel's built-in function, I can plot this histogram by inserting a bar chart. So back to these options. This was the histogram button. Up here is the what Excel calls the column graphs, or I call the bar charts. So I'll click the first one. And this is the histogram that we're looking for. All right, and now you see my bins are the way I want them instead of what Excel decides are good bins. And so this essentially is the answer to question A. Your histogram would look like this. So 10 in the first one, 5 in the second, 1 and 1. All right, so there's one more way we can make a histogram, just so we kind of explore all the different ways that you could do it in here. Especially if you're a Mac user. If you're not a Mac user, maybe this isn't the last one isn't as useful to you. If you're on a PC, maybe this one is all you need. If you're on a Mac, you can do it somewhat manually, the way I just did. But there's also an extra package called the data analysis package. You might need to add it in, and I think it's under Tools, Excel add-ins. You can add in the data analysis package. I can show you how to do that if you need to. I've already done it. So for me, it's under the Data tab. There's a special data analysis package. And for that, there's a histogram. Okay. Now, the histogram tool will help you build a histogram and plot a graph, but you need to specify some information. So let me cancel it first. All right. So the information you need to put in first are the bins. It doesn't want them like this with words in the middle. It wants them in a very specific way. It just wants, so these are my new bins. It wants the upper boundary of the bin. So for 0 to 9, I can just put in 9. For 10 to 19, 19, then 29, then 39. And what it will do is interpret this as the bin range from the bottom, whatever the lowest value is, to 9, then from there to 19, and so on. Now I'll go to Data Analysis, Histogram, click OK. All right, so you'll have an input range. The input range is the actual data. So I don't want that data, I want this data. That's what I'm making a histogram for. And then the bin range, and I can put in the bins that I just typed in. Okay, I didn't include any labels when I highlighted them, so I don't need to click that button. And then output options, I can just specify where to put it. I'm gonna just keep it on this same sheet. So output range, let's put the output, say, well, that looks good. We'll just keep it right there. There are options down here. I think the chart output tends to not be selected. If you want it to print a graph, which we do here, you need to select chart output. And then I'll click OK. It should take a second and then spit out a histogram, which looks like this other histogram. Okay, it's got the bin and frequency labeled, and the pattern looks exactly the same as before. So there's 3 ways. This way, using Excel's built-in histogram function, this way semi-manually doing it, and then this way using the data analysis add-in package. Particularly if you're a Mac user, this could be a better way to do it. Okay, let's go back and finish up the question here, and I can show you a couple other tricks in Excel. All right, so histogram, I think we've covered that enough. What are the mean, median, and mode? Well, we could do this with a calculator, but we can also ask Excel to do this value. So let me put in here mean, median, and mode. All right. Now for Excel, the mean is the average. If I could spell it. The average of these values. And so I type in equals average, open parentheses, highlight what I want to take the average of, close parentheses, and it will do the calculation. It will add up all of these numbers and divide by the total sample. And I get 9.823, whatever is there. This is some sort of a subjective thing, but it kind of bothers me when you have so many decimal places there. I like to just see the number in a way that makes a little more sense to me, right? Like the right number of significant figures. So if that bothers you also, you can come to number and change the number of decimal places. So let me reduce that down to something that makes a little more sense. Okay, so the average of these values is 9.8. Then we have the median. Now in Excel, it's just median. Equals median, highlight the data, and voila, we got a median of 6. If you were doing this by hand, what you would have to do is what we've already done. Order them either from smallest to largest or largest to smallest, and then count until you get to the middle, and you would find that the middle is in here. One note on this, if a sort of a theoretical note, if your data has an odd number, there will be a single number that's in the median. But if your data has an even number, you actually average the two numbers that are in the middle. And when you use Excel, it takes care of that for you. And then lastly, we have equals mode. And then same thing, equals mode, open parentheses, highlight. Okay, so the average was about 10, the median was about 6, the mode was about 3. So these numbers are not all equal. We don't have a symmetric distribution. Quick quiz. Is this a skewed right or skewed left distribution? Hopefully, you recognize this as a skewed right distribution. This tends to be kind of confusing because you want to say where the peak is where the skew is, but it's actually where the tail is. That's where the skew is. So this distribution is skewed to the right. Okay, and when you have something that's skewed to the right, like this, the mean is pulled higher than the median. And that's a general statement. When you have skew right, the mean is higher than the median. When you have skew to the left, the mean is below the median. And that's because the mean is more susceptible to these extreme values. So if there are some values over here, but there aren't counterbalancing values over here, the mean gets pulled this way. But the median is just the middle value, and so you can add a lot of data in this column. It's not going to move the median very much. All right, so mean, median, mode. Are there any outliers in this? I would say this is a somewhat subjective question. What is an outlier? There are some statistical ways to define it that we haven't talked about yet. But probably for most of us, we'd look at these numbers and see, okay, there's a bunch in this range, there's a bunch in this range, and then there's these two values here at the end. So I think it would be reasonable to identify these two values as outliers, that they're significantly greater than the rest of the data, right? 27 is almost twice the next highest value. So the question is, what happens when you eliminate them? And that's pretty easy. Once we've typed the data into Excel, I can just simply delete them. And now the mean drops to 7. The median, notice, hasn't changed very much. And the mode is still 3. It hasn't changed. So neither of these have changed at all. Okay, so I think we've covered all of that question. Hopefully that was a reasonably clear explanation of how you can make histograms and use some of these Excel features to get the basic characteristics of the data set you're looking at.